It may have been evening, but Arsenal needed a ray of sunshine to get a point in their first Champions League game. This is the Arsenal Raw Reaction Show. Hello and welcome to the Gooner Talk, back again with you guys and girls for another episode of what is our Raw Reaction Show. Joining you the morning after, the evening before. Arsenal nil, Atalanta nil in Bergamo, and I'm still ill on top of that too. So again, apologies if my voice is not the best. Apologies if I need to rush to grab a glass of water, which I do have with me. And apologies, of course, if the show is not as long as I would usually intend it to be. In fact, what I sometimes do in these mornings is open up the floor to your calls, and I may indeed do that a little bit later on in the show, depending on how things go, just to give myself a rest. So bear that in mind, of course, this Friday morning. But good morning to all of you joining us live in the chat box. Thank you, as always, for doing so. It's incredibly appreciated. Thank you to Pika, who already dropping a super chat. What a save indeed. We're going to talk about Raya's save and plenty more. Damien, good morning to you. To Amira, to Rich. Good morning to Edison, Jamil, Tom, Matt G, Mucho Grande, Sabusiso, Aidan, Shari, Brad, Maximius, Kim, Stevie, and plenty more of you guys and girls as well. Thank you for tuning in. It is, as I say, incredibly appreciated, and I hope that you will show your appreciation as well for the show being on with a press of that like button as well. Without further ado, though, let's jump into today's stories and slides. Arsenal take a point from what is certainly one of their trickier fixtures when it comes to the Champions League. This new format, which opens up Arsenal playing 8 games, of course, in the Champions League. They've got away fixtures against the aforementioned Atalanta. They also go to Inter Milan. They go to Sporting, and they also go to going into next year's games, they go to Girona as well. So not the easiest places in terms of away trips, and Atalanta will certainly be one of those sides I think that Arsenal will look back on as a good point. They're a team, of course, that beat Bayer Leverkusen in the final of the Europa League and also knocked out Liverpool from the competition last season too. Not failing to score, of course, in the final, and they scored 3 when they went to Anfield too. So I think Arsenal will look at that and look at the game and look at the context of it. They'll be frustrated, of course, I think, with the way it played out and with the chances that were missed. But also what they'll do is they'll also be very grateful that in the end, after giving away a penalty, that they, of course, did not give up the points overall. So let's go into some of the finer details. The lineup of the day, Arteta made 2 changes from the game, of course, against Tottenham. Rice coming in for Jorginho, and Jesus coming in for Leandro Trossard. I think a lot of people were expecting perhaps, or rather wanting, more changes from the team that beat Spurs. I certainly did. Calafiori, of course. I think Waneri I mentioned too. And Sterling perhaps getting an opportunity from the beginning of the game. But ultimately, Arteta decided to go with a relatively strong team and then bring off players throughout the game to give them the relevant amount of rest that was ultimately needed, such as Saka and Partey coming off. We saw Jesus and Timber also make way too. But ultimately, Arsenal went with a relatively attacking team. Rice coming back into the side as well and getting some important minutes ahead of this game at the weekend also. But ultimately, Arsenal were very thankful for the headline act of the game, which was David Raya's penalty save. I think where we have to start with this, though, is the actual giving away of the penalty, which I don't think Arsenal can have too many complaints about. It was rather clumsy from Thomas Partey, lost his man in this, and runs away from him before getting a clip on the back of his heel, which you can see from the angle which they showed after the game. Not during the game, frustratingly, but after the game they showed the angle, which demonstrated why Partey had indeed been at fault to give away the penalty, clipping the heel of Edison and stopping him from progressing past him into the box, and of course giving away a penalty. But it was, of course, David Raya then that stepped up to the plate and delivered a very smart stop and then a very reactive second stop to prevent Retegui from scoring and opening up a very difficult end to the fixture for Arsenal. I think, again, this highlights what I've been talking about in previous shows. The step up, the confidence, the improvement, the upgrade that I feel we now have at goalkeeper. You can still like and enjoy and praise Aaron Ramsdale for what he did at Arsenal, but the fact of the matter is Arsenal simply have a better goalkeeper in net these days, and an unchallenged, established, clear number one option who can just focus on his own game, and he's doing that. And I think there isn't too much of a debate that Raya has probably been Arsenal's most important player so far this season. His save against Strand Larsen against Wolves, his save, of course, in the game against Aston Villa, a number of saves, of course, in that game. He was strong in the box against Spurs, and of course was still good and decent, I suppose, against Brighton. I don't think could be too much at fault for the goal that they scored in the end. And of course, this penalty save just adding on top of that too. He is certainly putting himself into an equation of top elite goalkeepers, and very few, I think, could argue they've seen a better double save from a penalty than this one that we've seen this midweek as well. Just to go back to Partey, though, there is, I think, a little bit of a concern of Partey's performances recently. Clumsiness, inconsistency, and despite the fact that he's actually been present in a number of really solid runs for Arsenal in terms of starting games, there is just something not quite there. There is a real difference of the Partey that we've seen in recent games. His defensive ability, his spatial awareness has just not been as good. He's been turned far easier. And I thought Jorginho offered more when he came off the bench. And I actually think that Jorginho's in a good place to argue that he should be starting alongside Rice when it comes to Sunday's game against Manchester City at the weekend. Of course, when Mikel Merino returns, I would quite like to see Declan Rice drop into the six and Merino, of course, playing in midfield. And I think the fact that we signed Merino is for exactly this reason, is that Partey has his limitations now, and that it does, of course, raise the chance of errors happening. And when Merino is, of course, fit, I think we will see Rice drop into that number 6 role. Merino, of course, play in that left 8 position, and that's at least what I'm hoping that we'll see in the what we all hope is, of course, near future, but we don't have much of a timeline at the moment on his injury. But yeah, it was an odd performance overall from Thomas Partey, and one I think that he will look back quickly upon and try to turn around. I thought in terms of other players that didn't necessarily have the best of games, I'll come on to another shortly, but Gabriel Jesus didn't really strike me as someone who had the best of games at all. And I thought actually Ben White, not defensively, but offensively, I thought just Ben White wasn't necessarily as forward thinking as maybe we usually see from Ben White. I don't think we used our right hand side a lot, and I actually think that is part due to the absence of Martin Odegaard. I think we really missed Martin Odegaard in this game, and his lack of presence to link up with Ben White and to link up with Saka was definitely felt. It's impossible to replace somebody like Martin Odegaard. It doesn't matter who you sign or don't sign or whatever. When you lose a player of that level of influence on your team, you are going to suffer because of it. And this is why I actually wanted to see Ethan Nwaneri play this game. Now, I'm looking forward to the Bolton game next week because I think it'll be an opportunity finally to see Ethan Nwaneri start for Arsenal. And I hope I sincerely has a fantastic Arsenal game, because if he does, I think what it will provide us with is another option that hopefully Arteta has more confidence in picking for other fixtures, like the Leicester game, for instance, that follows that. If Nwaneri has a really good game next week against Bolton, I just hope it stands him in good stead to come in for Odegaard more often, because Havertz, I was fine with him potentially playing midfield if Odegaard is there. When Odegaard's not there, Havertz has to stay in the centre forward role for me. I just think we have to use him in that position, and I wouldn't be dropping him in without Odegaard being there, because I just think there's not enough creativity. His best collaboration, Havertz, comes when he is playing at centre forward, holding up the ball, linking up play, laying the ball off for other players. When it's playing in midfield, he needs an Odegaard type figure next to him, and the dynamic of a Partey, Havertz, Rice midfield, it does lack the creativity. I think that we need to try and. I think Trossard, I'd rather played there. I think Trossard's more creative, playing more centrally than, of course, they are. And, of course, it came from Trossard driving run that we've created a couple of chances. Some would argue Sterling maybe, but I don't necessarily see that as being an option, really. I thought that the player I was most frustrated by was Gabriel Martinelli. Now, his game at the weekend against Spurs, I think, was harshly analysed by myself and others, and it was better than what we gave credit for. But in that game, he obviously missed that big chance, and he misses two big chances in this game. Not only missing two big chances, but missing the target for those two big chances. In the first half, he gets a good layoff from Jesus. At that range, in that position, he has to test the keeper. And he doesn't. He snatches at the opportunity and it flies over the right-hand side of the goal. The chance at the end of the game is a must score. Sterling does well, Havertz does well to create the opportunity, but sadly, Martinelli misses it and absolutely has to score. And I'd be banking on anyone, any other left winger almost in the league in the top half of the table to be looking at taking this chance 9 times out of 10. It just, for me, it smacks of a player whose confidence is just not there. And the composure at the end of his chances, because he does good things. He drives into decent areas, he links up play okay, he takes players on. But when the chips are down and when he gets into the positions that really matter, and when it comes to playing a final pass or making that final attempt at goal, he's just not at the level of a Saka or even a Havertz, as well. And I that just clinical final execution continues to be missing. And he needs to be dropped, of course, for the game against City. And I'd much rather that Trossard played. And I'd much rather it was Trossard in the positions that he was getting into because, of course, Trossard is, for me, the best finisher in the side. And when we have games like against Man City, we are going to be limited to the number of chances that we ultimately get. It was always going to be a difficult game last night, and we were going to be limited to the number of chances that we created against a very decent Atalanta side, of course, away from home. But when you get into those positions, you absolutely need to be taking them. And Martinelli at the moment, I just don't have the confidence to take them. So I'd start him against Bolton midweek. I think just to raise, Jesus, of course, I think starts that game too. I think the front three needs to be Sterling, Jesus, and Martinelli with Nwaneri playing behind them. I think that would be my front three for that game, and front four rather, just to give them the opportunity to get, more opportunities to score. But what I would say with Miles Lewis-Skelly, I think has to be in there. And, I think even Rice could arguably still start that game, or you bring Jorginho in or someone like that. But I think that the game against Man City this weekend is going to be one where I think we should probably drop out Martinelli for the fixture. So just to end on kind of where Mikel Arteta was at, he spoke, of course, to the media after the game, was asked a number of questions about the performance, about how he felt about things, including, of course, David Raya as well. Just on the result, he said, I think we started the game really well in the first 20 to 25 minutes. I think we played with the ball in the right areas with a lot of intention and we were effective, but without creating too many clear-cut opportunities. After that, we lost control of the game because we were very inconsistent with the ball, giving a lot of simple balls away, and against a team that are a man-to-man that cost you moments to transition, because the moment you lose your man, there is a space and you are in equal numbers in the back line or overloaded. Defensively, we didn't suffer. That's the reality. But in the second half, we gave away a penalty, and I witnessed two of the best saves I've probably ever seen in my career to save us in that moment. After that, the game continued in the same way as the first 25 minutes. We were inconsistent with the ball. We had moments, but we never got it into dominance or a threat. Then we had a big chance with Gabby to win the game, which unfortunately didn't go in. Overall, there's a lot to improve. He continued just on Raya. He said, that's a question about it being, if Raya feels liberated, he was asked. And he said, that's a question for him, but last year was already very impressive and really good, even with a different context. This season, he has started exceptionally. The save he made against Villa today, he kept us in the game. That's the reality. You need that from your keeper at this level. I'm really happy he's in the form he's in at the moment. He was asked if he thought that Raya was the best goalkeeper in the world, to which he said, I don't know. I haven't seen all the goalkeepers, but at the moment he's been exceptional for us. That's for sure. He was asked questions about Manchester City, which I think have been embargoed until later on. We'll hear those quotes a little bit later. I knew they were doing the pre-Man City press conference straight after this one, and they'll hold those quotes back, of course. But He was asked about the way the team managed the game in the closing stages, to which he said it was really tricky game emotionally because you are all man orientated. So every action counts in your emotions. When we had certain moments that didn't go our way, I could sense the team was a little bit about to lose the discipline this requires. I think we showed more maturity tonight than last year. If you cannot see a way to win, at least don't lose. But that is certainly the message. But that is not certainly the message that I want to send the team. And I think that's important to point out. He doesn't want to talk about the message being if you can't win, don't lose. As the message always as a minimum needs to be win and try and win and ultimately aim to win at all costs. But in moments, you're not going to be able to win every single game. No team does that. No team has ever done that. Teams have off days. And I don't think this was necessarily an off day for us. It was just a difficult day for us. And I think that we managed the game defensively, other than the penalty that was given away by a player that I thought in Partey had a poor game. I think we managed the game really, really well, in defensively speaking. And that, of course, has come into the last game, which helped us beat Spurs. And I think it will hopefully come into the game on Sunday against City, which, again, we need to try and win with absolutely everything that we've got, because even though there is the benefit of drawing there, winning would be a huge boost to Arsenal's title chances. So as things stand, and I know it's not pretty reading, of course, there's only one game, but this new table, of course, that we'll be looking at more in depth every other week in the Champions League. Arsenal, of course, sitting in joint 16th place right now. 1 point. They, of course, are above Man City at the moment, but only on alphabetical order. Inter Milan, of course, as well. Barcelona lost their game against Monaco. It's worth pointing out. Bayern Munich are top on goal difference, and it is goal difference, of course, now that is the key factor. It used to be like head-to-head records, of course, and I think head-to-head records will come into it if you're level on points with like some teams and on the same goal difference. I'm sure it does, but goal difference matters, and Bayern Munich scoring 9 against Dinamo Zagreb has definitely had the biggest impact so far. When Arsenal have their games against some of the opposition like Zagreb themselves at home, they'll be looking, of course, to try and maximise their goal difference too. But for now, they sit right dead in the middle of the table in 16th place and looking to try and improve against PSG, who they take on at the Emirates in a few weeks' time. Of course, you shouldn't wait a few weeks to get the best deal for a VPN service, because you should go right now into the chat box, rather into the channel and video description to get yourself a click of the link that is, of course, as always, nordvpn.com/Gooner. Get yourself a significant deal off a 1 or a 2 year plan with NordVPN and 4 months extra thrown in free on top of that too. If you're not happy with the VPN service for whatever reason, which I don't understand why you would be, but if you happen to be just using it for a short period of time, there is a 30-day money-back guarantee as well. The ability to change your geolocation online on your tablet, on your mobile, or your laptop is invaluable in 2024, as you well know by now. And of course, making sure you are safe online in 2024 is massive. You absolutely need a VPN these days if you're on the net and surfing it and using it, just to give you that extra little bit of peace of mind so that you know whatever you're doing on the net is protected and private. Of course, the prize which you can win, courtesy of Football Prizes, goes on. There is the option and ability to win a signed and framed Ben White and Ricardo Calafiori Arsenal double mount, which has been fantastically put up by Football Prizes. In fact, I'm doing a quick check now. Yes, how many tickets are left? A quarter of tickets are left. So they are selling like hotcakes for this one. There's also an instant win prize to win a signed Gabriel shirt and a separate one for a signed William Saliba shirt too. Link down in the description as always. Massive thank you once again for Football Prizes for sponsoring the channel and to supporting us. And we have a really good record when it comes to these prizes. So I recommend that you go and head over to FP and check them out. Massive thanks again. Well, let's go to part 2 and your questions right after this. Okay, this is part 2 of the show where we jump into your chat box and get more from you all. And let's see what thoughts you've got, of course, on not just yesterday's game, but I imagine there'll be a lot of you thinking ahead to just 2 days' time when Arsenal take on Manchester City at the Etihad Stadium in a very important game. in the title race. Paul says Havertz can't play in midfield against Man City. He's most effective up top. I hope that we go 4-4-2 against Man City with Trossard and Havertz up front. I think you'll probably see a very similar team to the one that beat Spurs. You might see Sterling instead of Martinelli. I think that would probably be what I would do in that game. Sterling left, Trossard and Havertz playing kind of dovetailing in the middle, and then Saka on the right. You could argue maybe that Martinelli's good off the ball defensively, and we might need him defensively for the City game. That could be something that is thought about here. Tim says Martinelli sometimes looked like a juvenile playing with shoes 1 or 2 sizes too big. I love him, and I just hope he gets back in form. Magamba says it's just bad finishing for Martinelli. I think the rest of his game is good. Once he gets a knack for goal scoring, he will be like Saka again. Need to stick with him on the left till he comes good. I mean, the question is, how long do you stick with him? How long do you stick without Martinelli and expect better results? Khan says missing Odegaard is critical. We cannot expect us to be the same. We need to find the right players and balance to mitigate the loss. And it is difficult to do that. You know, it's really hard to do. And I think especially without Marino as well, not having Marino in the team is another big loss. And I think that would have helped offset the loss of Odegaard, because I think you could have maybe played Havertz more effectively there. Waneri, I think giving an opportunity to him in midweek next week, as I've already mentioned, is going to be really important to seeing how we can integrate him into the squad. But it's near impossible to replace a player as important as Odegaard. Like, City can't replace Haaland, Liverpool can't replace Salah, Chelsea can't replace Palmer. There's players in teams that no matter how many signings you've made, no matter who fills that spot, they're never going to give you the same amount as what that player did. You think about Spurs with Kane. When they lost Kane, it was always going to see a drop off. You were never going to get the same output of losing certain key players. And Odegaard is one of those players for us. Omar says, Taylor, do you remember Trossard playing against Arsenal or other Premier League teams? He was amazing as a dribbler and could take the ball on his own and score. But since he joined us, he has become a bit of a granny. I don't agree with that, Omar. I mean, you look at the big games that Trossard has delivered in for us. He's a big game player and our best finisher. So I don't agree with you there. Edan says, we are a defensive monster, but what about our attackers? They aren't sharp at all, and it's a bit of a shame. And of course, Arsenal at the moment have had a really challenging start to the season. The games that we played, Aston Villa away, Spurs away, we got Man City away, Atalanta away. Brighton are a very good team this season too. We had a very challenging start, and I think that's limited, obviously, our ability to be our free-flowing best, and we've managed games as best as we can. We're still unbeaten, of course, but we would like to see more goals scored. We're coming off the back of our record-breaking goal-scoring season, of course. Losing Odegaard is a big miss, and definitely going to be an effect. It's going to affect how creative we are. But when we get chances, we need to be more clinical. Martinelli has missed chances. Havertz has missed chances. Saka has missed chances. We need to be more clinical when it comes to taking the opportunities that we do create when they come along. Amira says, in my opinion, as poor as we've been so far, I don't think it's been that bad. City aren't much better either. Haaland's just that inevitable. Replace him with any other striker and the narrative around City changes. I think something that I discovered this morning, just looking into the big chances created stats from this season, Arsenal have only created one big chance less in the Premier League compared to City. And when you compare the fact that Arsenal have played Wolves, Aston Villa away, Brighton and Spurs away, compared to City, who have played Chelsea, West Ham, Ipswich and Brentford, the fact that we've created just one less big chance, also having lost Rice and Odegaard for one key game at the beginning of the season, having not had Mikel Marino since the entire season, of course, as well. I think when you combine all of those factors, it's actually not looking too bad against the team, of course, that we're measuring up against in the league. GZ4 says, I feel like we've systemed our flair and expression out of our players to a certain degree. People will moan about Arteta's approach to certain fixtures, will moan about how the system is, but the fact of the matter is that it's system football that has won 6 of the last 7 Premier League titles. Manchester City's system is and the way in which Man City play, of course, in that way of Guardiola, has won them that and got them that dominance. So, yeah, we may not have the flair and expression of, 10 years ago under Arsene Wenger, but that team under Arsene Wenger wasn't winning anything other than the FA Cup and falling gradually and slowly out of European contention as well, and ultimately into the Europa League and regressing. I'd much rather us win games than have the flair we still play good football. We still score really good goals. It's worth pointing that out. But ultimately, we need discipline. We need the system. And it is these things that have taken us to where we are now. And I think we're doing that not without any flair at all or without any expression at all. I think look at the goal that we scored. Look at the preseason game against Bayer Leverkusen. That shows you the potential of the team, of what we can achieve with these current set of players. But there is a combination of the two, and I think that we are seeing that. But I just think that there is a desire or want from fans to see like a team that are just blowing opposition sides away. But in reality, you may be able to do that for a certain amount of time, but eventually it's going to burn out. And we've seen that to a degree. And I think the system is what is going to be more likely to take us to a title. It's more likely going to deliver us a Champions League. So we can have all the flair in the world. You can have all the expression in the world, but I think it needs to come with a measure, and I think it needs to come with balance. And some of that flair and expression may have been system out of our players to a degree, but that degree is not enough that I think it's detrimental. And in fact, I still think it's more supportive of us getting more points and better results. Angela says we need Martinelli to score a couple of goals against Bolton and hope this triggers a significant confidence improvement. We need Ethan to play and show us what he can really do in the first team. Steal Your Face says we were all panicking and losing our minds about the attack at the same time last year. I'm not too worried. Hopefully return to form soon. And Odegaard is not out long. I think it's a really good point that's brought up. At the start of last season, of course, when Arsenal were dropping points against Fulham and dropping points against Spurs. And, last season, we weren't necessarily our free-flowing best either. And sometimes it takes time at the beginning of campaigns to get up and running, to be able to find your free-flowing best. Arsenal in their opening games, they beat Nottingham Forest 2-1. They beat Palace 1-0. They drew with Fulham. They relied on 2 late goals to beat Manchester United. They scored 1 goal away at Everton. And then they found their feet a bit more against PSV when they won 4-0. But then they drew against Spurs. They scored 1 goal away at Brentford. And it wasn't until the end of September that Arsenal scored 4 goals in a single league game, which was away at Bournemouth, of course, which had a penalty and a late header from Ben White as well. And then we had the 1-0 win over Man City, a 2-2 draw with Chelsea. And then we got another big win, a 5-0 win over Sheffield United. So until October 28, Arsenal didn't score 4 or more goals in a game twice until October 28th. So I think maybe there is certainly something that is there, and there's a point there as well. And ultimately, Arsenal have picked up points in games like, the thing about the Aston Villa win. That's a huge turnaround from last season. Those 3 points that we dropped in that game last season ultimately proved the difference between us winning and losing the title. This time around, Arsenal have managed, of course, to pick up a very important win through the way in which they approached that game against Aston Villa that we didn't last time. Of course, we dropped points against Brighton. We all know that the main cause of that was out of our hands, and the Declan Rice red card was the main priority factor. But we still created chances in that game that we argued we should have taken through Havertz and through Saka too. So overall, I think that there is an overreaction to a degree about how Arsenal started the season. I think we've started the season better this season compared to the start of last season. And if we can pick up a result against Man City, of course, as well, that would be massive. That would be absolutely massive. And then, of course, Arsenal, after that game against Manchester City, we've got Bolton, we've got in the league, Leicester, Southampton, Bournemouth, before we then have Liverpool at home. And that's a chance, I think, to pick up some very decent results and start to build that momentum and start building that confidence ahead of the game when we go to St James's Park and, of course, play, Liverpool as well. Tailwood says we score great team goals, but we don't rely on individual brilliance or man doing stepovers and banging the ball in from distance. I'm not too fussed, but when we don't win, fans want individuals to turn up. Now, if you look at this season, I think there have been some individuals that have showed up in important moments for us. Of course, Havertz is one of them. Trossard is another. Partey's goal, the second goal against Aston Villa, was also a moment. Gabriel from that set piece turning up in that moment. So there are times where players step up in big moments for us. Yes, we want long-range screamers and we want players, of course, that can deliver what a De Bruyne can do at times. But if you are relying on those moments, I do think that there is something to say that that's not going to be sustainable enough in the long term. And if you are delivering on a more consistent basis through your own philosophy, you've got a much better chance of getting over the line. Innocent Elema says, Tom, you're defending the team. Our games are boring and without cutting edge in the attack. I think, again, you look at the oppositions that we've played against, we're saying that we're defending the team without any cutting edge. But I was bashing the team when we lost at Aston Villa last season because we didn't take the chance. We didn't approach the game in the right way. But we've won that game. We've won and picked up 3 points that we dropped last season. So it's difficult. I don't know what you're expecting from me, to be honest. And I always offer the opportunity, of course, for people to come on and say what they need to say. But I don't know what more you're expecting me to say that you think I should be saying. I've said that Martinelli is wasteful. I've said that we need to be better in the final third and have missed big chances. And I think ultimately there are players like Partey who haven't been good enough. So I'm really struggling when people come along and say, Tom, you're being too defensive, because I'm like, well, what more should I be saying that you think I'm not saying? That's my issue with that. So I can be critical, and I have been critical, but it's not enough for somebody else. Like what says, Tom, do you earn six figures? My goodness me, I wish. Vanajuti says, if Eddie had dropped the same performance as Jesus or missed the chances Martinelli has had recently, he would have suffered a lot more of the criticism from the fan base. Maybe, but I'm struggling there to see the relevance to this season. And Nketiah was always a bit of a scapegoat, but I don't think that we've missed, Nketiah or anything like that. Stephen says, I just think it's a case of us not going yet in our attack. Give it time. We have that quality for sure. Scurry says, morning, Tom. When do you think that he will give Nwaneri a chance? I really think he should start on Sunday. Absolutely not. No way should Nwaneri start on Sunday. Starting Nwaneri on Sunday is mad for me. Like, start him against Bolton in the League Cup. You don't start him in the game at City. No. No, we don't. We don't start him at City. That would be madness. I would have started him last night, but you don't start him at City. Let's go to Fahim says, I challenge any team to play Atalanta away and dominate them. I think anyone would ultimately struggle. Sila dropping a super chat. So we've tried Trossard and Havertz in the midfield and yielded the same results. Our attack form is very worrying. I'm not there yet. Snake Eyes says, Tom, it is a good point. I understand that the game was not pretty to the eyes, but in the context of everything going on, we take the point on to City. Thank you, Snake Eyes. Idan says, considering our ambition, we're far behind. We expect a higher level. We do want to go for the title. I thought that we would be better by now, but I'm really struggling with this. Like, we're 2 points behind City at this stage, having had a more difficult start than them. We've not lost a game this season. We've beaten Aston Villa. We've beaten Spurs, both away from home. What is the issue? Like, what's the problem? Why are people so angry? Maybe angry is too far. Why are people so indifferent? Why is there such a malaise? I'm really struggling with this. I want to hear from people only, and I'm only going to put this into the chat if you are one of those. Okay? So please don't linked if you want to join and have your point and put your point of view across into the chat box. Please do not join the chat if you aren't angry or have a malaise or are feeling like these comments that we're reading. I'm just going to put that out there because it'll be a boring call. That's all I'm going to say with the greatest amount of respect. I want to hear from those that are like Idan, who says, considering our ambition, we're far behind. I want to hear from people like Idan right now. And I want them to justify this point of view of why it's so bad right now, of why where we're at is so concerning. That's the point of view I want to hear. So if that's where you're at, I want to hear from you. I want to hear from you. So please do jump in the call. The link is there for you if you would like to do that. But as I say, I don't want to hear people jumping in and saying, I think they're wrong and we're fine, because we know that point of view. I want to hear from the people that are of a different mindset. Benny says, "What is far behind?" And again, this is where I'm at, Benny. I don't know. I don't get where the context of far behind is. To be honest, City have created in the Premier League one more big chance than us in the first 4 games, despite their dominance against teams. One more big chance than us. So that's where I'm struggling. So I want to hear your thoughts. Let's get Temi on. How you doing, Temi? You good? You well?
Yeah, I'm fine.
Good stuff,
I'm
man.
angry.
Tell me what you
Okay,
want to
I'm
say.
not angry. Anyway, I just feel the season has started a bit too uh, slow. The way they are playing, that's there's this speed that that I noticed in the like two seasons ago, the 2022-2023 season. Or maybe I'm too nostalgic about it, but I just feel since then, it
From what
almost feels
season?
like, yeah.
From what
You
season?
said,
Sorry.
yeah. So
Yeah,
it
which
it, it
season are you feeling like we're slow compared to? Sorry, I didn't quite hear your point.
the 2022-2023 season.
Okay, so 2 seasons ago.
Yeah.
Um,
So I feel like since then, maybe
okay.
because of how the season ended, you know,
Yeah.
maybe it's something that maybe they don't want to play like that anymore, and then they just choose this slow, let's dominate, let's control the game kind of.
Mm. I mean that 22-23 season. There were some tricky games for us that, like, if you think about how we started, I'm looking back at how we started that previous season now. I'm just going through. Um, so we won away at Crystal Palace. We beat Leicester 4-2, and we beat Bournemouth 3-0. And then we beat Fulham 2-1, and we beat Aston Villa 2-1. And we had like a really good start to the season. And then, of course, we lost at Old Trafford 3-1. And the mood obviously hit a low point there. And yes, the start of the season was perhaps more attacking and we were more dominant. I think also there's an element of surprise to that start of the season, wasn't there? Like, we didn't expect Arsenal to be in the title race during that season. And so teams that we came up against as well, if you think about it from this point of view, teams that we came up against weren't expecting Arsenal to be a side that were going to be challenging for the title. And back then, Arsenal had a bit of the lightweight stereotype still attached to them. Whereas you fast forward 2 years to today, every team that plays Arsenal respects them as a Premier League title challenger. So they changed the way they approach every single game against Arsenal compared to 2 years ago. So it's much tougher for us to be like we were 2 years ago because the teams we're playing are playing and operating differently against us, if that makes sense. But I think when you look at the fact that we dropped points at Aston Villa, a team, of course, that we've had struggles against, we beat them 2-0 away from home, scored 2 good goals, defend, of course, some big chances that we conceded as well. You go to Spurs, who I know that we've beaten now 3 seasons in a row away from home, but prior to these 3 seasons, Arsenal hadn't won a league game at Spurs since 2014. Incredibly a long amount of time since we won that game. And now we're going up against a City team. And I'm speaking to friends of mine, other journalists that support City, and they see Arsenal as the only team that really have got City's number at the moment. They played them 3 times last season, winning 2, one in the Community Shield, one away, one at home, and of course drawing the game away from home at the Etihad. And I feel like maybe people are overreacting, Temi, a little bit.
My second issue is this. Now that we've lost Odegaard for months or at least weeks, who's the replacement? I feel you shouldn't go into a season and you don't have. It almost feels like we are grasping at straws now.
Mm.
Like we are like we are desperate because if a player is injured, surely there has to be someone that you count on. You he's in the plan as the alternative, right? But I don't know. In the past 2 games, we've seen what I think Trossard played at 10 against Tottenham.
Mm-hmm.
Then who played
Yeah.
at 10 yesterday? Uh, so that's the real concern I have because it's all if Ethan is supposed to be the replacement for Odegaard, why isn't he playing? Just play the kid. Let's see what he's made of.
Against Man City.
No, against Atalanta last
Okay.
night. I would have
I
preferred that. I
Yeah.
still feel Man City is a step too far for him, or maybe the kid is talented enough. We don't actually know. But if you would start him in a game, it has to be yesterday. I don't see.
I don't think it has to be. I would have done, and I said that, and I put him in my lineup for the preview. But I know where Arteta's come from. He knows that Atalanta away is obviously one of the trickier fixtures we've got in this year's Champions League. He knows that type of game for a 17-year-old is going to be a big challenge, especially the man-to-man tactical element of the game, which was incredibly hard to read. Gasparini's got a very strange, unorthodox style, which, senior players even struggle with. So to throw a 17-year-old in, I understand why he didn't. If he doesn't start him against Bolton, then I think we can start pointing fingers and being like, what the hell are you doing? Why aren't you playing him? Especially when Odegaard's injured, because I think you need to prepare him.
By the way, Atalanta have a certain former Arsenal ex-player, a former Arsenal player. Yeah. And I mean, this guy was, I don't want to say mediocre, but I mean,
I think that's probably a fair description, Temi. Mediocre would be probably fair, yeah.
I don't see why he can't start it. I just don't see it.
I mean, to be fair, if you're measuring Atalanta based off the fact that they've got Kolasinac, I don't think that really works. I know where you're coming from, but I think that's a bit FIFA ratings type way of looking at, looking at a team, to be honest, because Atalanta are still a side that won the Europa League last season. No matter if, he was obviously part of that team that won the Europa League last season. So I don't think that you can take that for granted just because he plays for them. I think that when it comes to looking at what we've done so far, there is not enough to be like really to a point of concern that you're worried about our title credentials based on what we've done, based on who we've faced, based on how we performed. The Odegaard point you bring up, is it concerning we don't have him? Yes, because he's one of, if not our best player, alongside Saka and Rice, of course. And Raya, you could argue at the moment as well. Saliba, Gabriel. We've got an amazing team. That's the thing. We've got great players. But if City lose Haaland, they don't have a backup. If Liverpool lose Salah, they can play someone like Jota or someone like Gakpo maybe there, but they're not Salah, right? And if Chelsea lose Cole Palmer, they've got no one that can deliver us. Even with the £1 billion that they've spent, they've got no one as good as Cole Palmer that they can bring in. When you lose these types of players, the reality is that you're going to see a drop-off. There's going to be a void that exists creatively, especially in a position like Odegaard, through his loss. The argument that we should have kept Fabio Vieira, I don't really get because he's injured already. And any minutes that went to Vieira, for me, I think should be going to Nwaneri anyway. And secondly, the transfer argument, I don't know who you signed, Temi. Like, who do you sign that effectively fills that void of Odegaard's absence?
I don't want to sound ridiculous, but I liked Eze before he went to Bayern,
Elise.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
I know why you've messed it up. Yeah. Elise. The thing about Elise, right, is Elise isn't a right 8. He doesn't play the position that Odegaard plays for us. For me, is a wide playmaker, and I think his style will change to a degree at Bayern Munich. But I don't see him as the Odegaard role, and nor do I see him going and saying, because if he went to Bayern, as he has done, he's starting games. And the reality is Elise wouldn't be starting for us, would he? Because he'd be on the bench behind Odegaard and Saka. So if you've got the option to go to Bayern Munich and start games, or Arsenal and sit on the bench behind Saka and behind Odegaard,
you'll go to Bayern.
You're going to go to Bayern, aren't you? So, and that's the thing. I think he's a good player, but I don't think he fit. I thought you were going to say Eze, which ironically you did, but you didn't mean to. I thought you were going to say Eze. And again, I think the same argument applies, doesn't it? Because if you're Eze, and you've got the option of, play, obviously you want to make that step up. No one came in for him, it sounded like, in the end. And I think that they actually would have sold Eze if someone had stumped up the money for him, however much money that would have been. It probably would have been 60, 70 million maybe to sign him. Is he going to look at that and go, well, I'm going to sit behind Odegaard and Saka at the moment? And are Arsenal going to spend 70 million on a player that's going to sit behind Odegaard and Saka is the other question you have to ask.
People are talking about benching Havertz and signing a striker, and it's like 65 million. So
who's the striker, man? I'm going to ask you.
Get me Isaac. Sell the whole club and get me Isaac.
I'd love Isaac, man. I'd love Isaac, but have you got 150 million down the back of your sofa? Because I don't. So yeah, Temi, thank you so much for jumping on. I really appreciate it. You're the only one who has, so respect to you. But thank
All
you,
right.
mate. Really appreciate it. Lovely stuff. Right, let's jump into the chat box a little bit more and get some more comments, and then we'll get our next caller on. Just 2 seconds. Let's go to Tom, who says Eze would have been a good option too, mind you. However, he'd have to be convinced that we can find play time for him. Jabu says Mikel Marino would have played there. He is injured at the moment, though. Relax. Speaking of Mikel Marino, we've got someone on the call who is called Mikel Marino FC. Tell me, mate, what your name is. How you doing?
Hi Tom. Aleph here.
Aleph, nice to meet you,
We
Aleph.
did speak a while ago. But
I have
yeah,
memory like a sieve, so
yeah, no, it's fine. You get lots of people coming on, so I don't blame you. Oh, sorry, that's my
that's all right,
phone.
man.
That
Tell
just
me your
accidentally hit
tell me
me.
your thoughts of where your head's at regarding the situation.
So last night, for me, when I was watching it, I think it was clearly. I think it was a bit of a repeat of what happened in Tottenham. I felt our midfield was a bit all over the place. They did the job well, I thought. I think with Rice being there was a bit more energy, a bit more like because Rice was making up for maybe Partey's lack of energy and mobility. So he was able to go out and make those sort of tackles and win the ball back very quickly. Let's say that. But you could tell without Odegaard, there was a massive devoid of creativity. It didn't seem like Saka was in the process of his thinking to do his darting runs behind, maybe waiting for that through ball or a quick 1-2 or something like it. Just there was obvious lack of creativity. Whether the thinking was to have Kai Havertz try and do that role or just Kai Havertz coming deep to provide that kind of thing. Now, I think it's one of those things. I think you've already said it. We're very unlucky to have Marino injured straight away because he clearly would have been in that, and Kai Havertz would have been doing his proper striking role, not needing to come back that deep.
Yeah.
We're in very unfortunate circumstance. Regardless of Kai Havertz coming, regardless of Marino being fit or not, I still think we are one striker short. I would have liked to have seen Jesus play the winger role more this season to provide cover for Saka and Nelly. I know we got Sterling in, but I feel like between Trossard, Sterling, Saka, and Nelly, I think like that's a good amount of cover for our wings and two strikers. Now I know you keep saying, "Oh, who that striker would have been." I'm going to put one striker out there. He's a bit of an injury risk, and I think he's the only one that's potentially would have been available. And for me, it would have been Victor Boniface. I just really like the look of him. He's a very different striker. I know there's a bit of injury risk with him, but apart from that, the way he plays, he's already playing the Leverkusen style, attacking football, big, strong, very good
No
pace.
look passes.
Yeah,
Did you see his no look pass last night? Very good.
Yeah, I find it quite comical. I thought, hey, well,
I found it quite comical that all the commentary lost their minds over it. But if you look at the defenders, it doesn't actually fool anyone. All the defenders follow the ball.
No.
I know they score.
No.
He doesn't fool anyone.
He didn't sell it. He didn't sell it. He didn't sell it. No, so I really like I like Victor Boniface in Leverkusen prior to his injury. Then he got injured, and I was looking at his injury record a while ago, and he does seem to have quite a few of these sort of niggling issues, a bit like Isak, but Isak sort of coming out of it. So who knows? He's a bit of a risk, but I like him just purely because it provides a different dimension to our attack, right? Very similar to Kai Havertz, big, strong, but with Boniface, you get a bit more pace injected into that. And I think his physical presence, and I think this is the issue as well. When Kai Havertz plays up front, I feel like the opposition attackers don't necessarily think about him as a massive threat. That he doesn't instill that fear.
I think with Boniface, for instance, he's the type of guy that next summer, if he continues on this form, he definitely should be someone Arsenal will be looking at. The issue, obviously, last season was he had this adductor issue, which kept him out, I think, until April. And at that point,
he
if
missed
you're
the
Arsenal,
whole season. Yeah,
Well, he was there
yeah.
for the start of the season. He got injured in January.
Oh,
So
yeah. So yeah.
yeah,
I
yeah. So
mean,
he misses
during the
like the second
pivotal
half. I think
moments. Yeah,
I'm just getting
yeah,
up his numbers now. He missed
yeah,
23 games for club and country in the second half of the season. If
yeah.
you're Arsenal and you're thinking,
Mm,
right, when we sign this striker, because we all know that
yeah,
Arsenal are keen to sign one, because we know they were keen on signing
yeah.
Benjamin Sesko, but he obviously wanted to have a quick resolution, and
Even
Arsenal
that whole
weren't in the
Vlahovic thing, wasn't it,
Vlahovic.
as
We know
well?
that, but I mean,
Prior
at
season.
that time,
Yeah,
Gabriel Jesus was definitely
yeah,
the priority, even though Vlahovic
yeah,
was seen as more of a market opportunity at the time.
yeah,
We
yeah.
know that Arsenal are keen on adding a striker if we find the right one. The
Mm-hmm.
problem that we've
Mm-hmm.
got
Mm-hmm.
is that Arsenal, when they go to sign that striker, basically want to be 100% sure that striker that they go for and spend the big money on is going to be the guy.
Mm,
They don't want to be in a position
yeah.
where they do a Mudryk again, potentially. They may have, we got away with Mudryk to a degree. Chelsea certainly didn't. We don't want to be in a position where I keep thinking of examples and I keep coming back to Chelsea with the mistakes they've made in the market. We
Mm.
don't want to be
I'll
like
be
Man United with Casemiro, they need a DM.
Yeah,
They have to
yeah,
go out and add the DM. They spend 80 million on Casemiro and it
yeah,
turns out to be a
yeah,
disaster. They need to be
yeah.
100% sure that when they drop
Mm,
the big money on the centre forward, which I'm confident they want to and will do, that it's going to be the guy. And last summer,
mm,
the guy for them wasn't there. Now, for me, next summer, if Gyökeres has the season that he had last season again, I don't think you have a choice.
mm,
I think you go and activate the release clause personally and just get him in.
yeah.
Um, but that's where I'm
Yeah,
at with
no,
the striker thing.
100% agree. I think even with Kai Havertz, I think we were very lucky. Somehow Arteta managed to. I don't know what the thinking was, whether he was meant for both the roles, in midfield and striking. But I
Mm,
think Arteta got very lucky again. I think even to Ben White to a certain extent. I know he was brought in as a centre back. I don't know if the long term thinking always was to be right back, but
mm,
he's now one of our better players, right? Two of them.
yeah.
So I think Arteta's. I'll give him credit as well. He's managed to find places for these players within the team, from the original play. So that shows the quality of Arteta himself. But
I
I
guess the question is,
100%
Salif,
agree.
what's your because you're agreeing a lot, which
Yeah,
which I like. Don't get me wrong, but the question
yeah. I still feel
is
like
what is
we
it
need.
vehemently you disagree with, sort of thing at the moment, or what is it you're looking at Arsenal going that this isn't good enough,
I
and I'm
think.
really concerned about it.
I I think I yeah, I think I think we made ourselves a lot weaker by selling ESR. I know ESR and
He
Nketiah were
wanted to
both.
go.
I'm not
He
sure if
asked
we
to
had
leave.
to. Okay, fair enough. If that's the case, if you wanted to leave,
Mm,
fair enough. But we did make ourselves a lot weaker because for me, it's one of those things. We naturally don't have a replacement for Odegaard within the team, someone to provide that creativity role. Then we let go of Vieira as well on loan. Whether again, I'm not sure if he was asked to leave or not.
mm.
We didn't get a
I don't know
replacement,
about
whether it
that
was
one. I was
another
just
loan
told that
option or
Smith
someone.
Rowe and Nketiah and Nelson, they
Yeah,
basically have made it clear that they wanted new
wanted,
challenges. Yeah.
and that's fair enough. I think they had the dues, but I mean, there are a lot of places within the team that we have, kind of like for like replacements. But with ESR, I always felt okay. To be honest, ESR is one of my favorite players.
Mm.
I
Yeah,
rated
same.
him. Maybe a lot of people will be surprised. I rated him more higher than Saka. I actually thought he had a higher ceiling when he first
You weren't
entered the
alone.
team,
A lot of
just
people did.
purely because of what it was capable of doing from midfield, running with the ball. And we don't. And for me, ESR was that natural replacement for Odegaard. If Odegaard was ever to be sold, injured,
Mm.
put ESR there. The kind of like for like camish kind of players. So I think we left ourselves short there. I always go back. For me, it's about wider picture as well, not just the Champions League and just these games. I always felt like we need a orthodox striker,
Mm.
and I think it's about 2 to 3.5 seasons now. We've been crying out for it, and we've needed it. We haven't really fully addressed it, whether it's because of market opportunities, nothing not really aligning, the whole Sesko thing falling apart.
Yeah.
I just felt like even for our Premier League title challenge, I would have so much more confidence in this Arsenal team. Not that I don't really, whatever. I just my own like.
Yeah.
Let's say if I was at percentage wise, I might be at 60, 55% of thinking, oh, we might win. If we had
Yeah.
a proper Gyökeres or a Boniface, that would jump up to 85, 90%. in my confidence of thinking, yeah, we're going to go win the title. And I think these are the two places we really left ourselves short because of what happened with the transfers and not being able to take opportunities.
Yeah, I think that I agree that if we had our own version of, an Erling Haaland, not equivalent, but a natural striker, then absolutely. I just come from the position that I understand why we don't at the moment. And I look at it from the perspective of, yes, I'm frustrated that we don't have that. I understand why we don't have it. And also, I know the club are keen on getting it when they think that the right option becomes available, that to them so far hasn't. I also think, obviously, last summer, the Nketiah sale predicated a lot of what happened in that position. And it didn't happen right until the end of the window in the end, because we wanted to maximise how much money we wanted. Because let's be honest, fans like us have been moaning that we don't sell enough for a very long time. So you can't really blame the club for wanting to maximise the amount of money that they get from players. I think that next summer, there are going to be strikers on the market. If Boniface has a clear season without injury, if Gyökeres has another campaign like he did last season, if Šeško continues on the development pathway he looks like he's on, scored again last night for Leipzig against Atletico Madrid, it's worth pointing out. Like, if these players continue on that pathway, next summer is going to be a strikers market far more. But I just think that it's a bit detached from the reality of where we are right now. And it's not really a finger-pointing exercise at the moment, if that makes sense.
There's two actually just I'm going to head off soon anyway.
Just
last I wanted point, to ask you.
It's all good.
Yeah, last point. Sorry.
That's all right.
First of all, just quick thoughts. What did you think about the whole Nunes? Do you think it was just Nunes link? Do you think it was completely?
Oh, it was rubbish.
Could have
it was
potentially him on a loan. Rubbish.
It was a joke.
Okay, fine. Fair enough.
It was a joke.
Reliably.
In fact, I know it was a joke for very reliable reasons. I know it was a joke that was just designed to whip up the fan base in the final days of the window. So there was no truth in the Nunes thing, but it shows you how easily misinformation spreads on that terrible platform. Hey, Alex.
Yeah.
So
No, of course. The last one would be, I think this was another genuine link. It was the Genoa striker, Artem, whatever his name is. The Russian or Ukrainian guy.
I
forgot his name now. I can't.
Dovbyk?
I think so. Yeah. He was in Genoa. He went to
Girona, not Genoa.
Girona.
Yeah.
Yeah, what did you make of him? Because I liked him. I thought for a big guy, he had good a bit mobility. That could have been a cheap option as well. What do you think?
He's one of those where he's
just too valuable.
He's 27.
Not to spend the money. Yeah,
he's 27, and last season at Girona, who had obviously had a very good campaign, he's moved now to Roma, and he's played 4 games and he scored 1 goal so far, which ironically was against Genoa. And Roma haven't had the best start to the season. They've drawn 3 and lost 1, and that's taken that step to Serie A. So
Rossi's been sacked, hasn't he?
Mourinho was there before, wasn't he? He's gone Fenerbahce. So I don't know who's the Roma manager at the moment.
Mourinho was sacked, and I think Daniel De Rossi took over, and I think he's now been sacked as well.
Oh, yes, you're right. Yeah, like yesterday, Daniel De Rossi was sacked after 4 games. So there you go. Yeah. So we'll see how Dovbyk gets on, but I'm not sure he was one really that Arsenal were looking at. And I think in some ways, maybe it goes to show that you have to be careful about a one-season wonder. We've been burned by Pepe, we were burned by that deal. So it's about being conscious of that. But Alif, thank you so much for your call. I really appreciate it. Thank you for jumping in.
No worries. Take care.
Thank you, mate. We'll have one more call before we wrap up, because I'm conscious not only of the time, but also the health of my throat. And we'll finish with King's call. I'm curious, King, what is it that you're vehemently disagreeing with me for? I'm curious.
For me, Tom, I was very underwhelmed with us not signing at least one more attacker this transfer window.
Yeah.
And my reasons are that I'm always quality over quantity. But 2 things can coexist. Like, I feel like as stable as we are as a club, as attractive as we are as a club, and as forward as we are moving, I think we should have at least tried to sign Esse. And I don't think we did try to sign him. And if we tried to sign him and he said no, then fair play. You can say he said no. because I do think the reason why I like Eze a lot is he can play in both 8 roles. He can
Yeah.
play as a number 10.
Mm.
He can play as a wide option, even though the wide option he plays as for Crystal Palace is very different for the way he would play for us. But we've seen even for England that he can play as a wide option. So I think with his age, his maturity, and his technical ability, and the fact that he's someone who's very good from that ball, he's someone who's very brave in taking shots, and he's very established in the league. He's probably one of the best attackers outside the top 6 teams. I think it was a punt that we should have tried at least, because
I don't necessarily associate Eze with like mad creative numbers though. Like if we're thinking about like we're lacking creativity because of Odegaard's absence, and Eze would I think come into that position. He got 4 assists in the Premier League last season. I'm just looking at his numbers. He finished as the 48th, joint 48th highest big chance creator, which is the same as Anthony at Manchester United for the record. It's lower than Declan Rice. It's lower
I mean,
than a lot of other
is that
players.
per 90 or is that just overall?
It's number of big chances created, so it's not per 90. No, I can get you his per 90 stat.
Yeah, I think per 90 would be more relevant because he didn't play the whole season. If I'm not wrong.
Yeah, that's fair enough. Let me go on his FB ref. So, shot creating actions, he's in the 81st percentile for attacking midfielders and wingers, 4.95 shot creating actions per 90, assists 0.18, 54th percentile. That's per 90. So that's not the best.
His isn't the best.
He's more of a goal scoring midfielder than a creative midfielder,
that's
I'd
what I
argue.
was saying. He's more someone who will give us goals,
right,
from himself rather than creating goals. So obviously, scoring goals is another form of creativity itself, and I think it gives us another dimension in the attack, because we do know that Mikel likes a very methodic, a very systematic attacking force, where your freedom is limited. It's more about the system and the positions that he wants you to find, and this is why sometimes we can look a bit robotic, and I feel like someone like Eze is more mature. He's like a hybrid between like a ESR and an Odegaard, where he's not as tactically astute as Odegaard, but he's more so than ESR, who's probably the opposite player of an Odegaard, where he just wants his freedom and do whatever he wants to do.
I think Eze is closer to Smith Rowe than Odegaard in terms of his style. I agree with you in the broader sense of I wanted Arsenal to sign another attacking player, because in some ways that like I thought we needed to bring in a wide player, which we did in Sterling, of course, but we let Reece Nelson go, which I've got my issues with that, because we've let Nketiah, Smith Rowe, and Nelson leave. We've signed Sterling, we've signed Marino as kind of replacements for them, but obviously that leaves you one down. We're expecting Waneri to be one of them, fills one of those slots, but at the moment isn't playing really because he needs to be integrated, and I don't think that comes now. I would have started him last night, but obviously Arteta has been he's more cautious when it comes to these youngsters, and I think if he doesn't start against Bolton, then there's definitely a question mark that needs to be raised of Arteta when it comes to Waneri, because I think that's.
But
go on.
That's right. Yeah, I was just gonna say with that, is that more a trust issue from, again, going back to when it comes to Arteta? It's not just about how good you are on the ball. It's more about what will you do off the ball, and he may feel like Eton isn't there yet. But then again, you can only get there by playing. And I was a bit disappointed that first he didn't start, second he didn't get subbed on, because I do feel like with young players like Eton, it's not just about giving him a message, but it's giving a message to the whole club. As if you are talented enough and you train hard enough, you will get your opportunity. And I do feel like from the cameo that we saw against Spurs, that he should at least been given 15, 20 minutes cameo to show that he's next in line. Because now that Odegaard is gone, if we don't give him opportunities, he's turning 18 next season, it could create unnecessary issues down the line, that youngsters are not getting a fair chance, because we've seen a lot of players leave. Some are not good enough. Some didn't get enough opportunities, and that's normal. But we can't also continue not giving our best talents an opportunity, and that is it's like a clash between the manager, his style of or his philosophy, and the players that we have, and one is going to have to give for the other to get an opportunity. And I do feel like in this scenario, Arteta also must trust in Eton. And yeah, we're early on the season. We can't just jump on him. But down the line, as you said, the Bolton game is a perfect game to give him an opportunity.
Yeah.
And I even feel like if he does well there, give him the Leicester game as well. Because we've seen so many players in the past from Arsenal, whether it's your Cesc Fabregas, your Wilshere, your Abu Dhabi, your Aaron Ramsey. They've done so well when they've been given these opportunities, whether it's in the league or in the Champions League. Like, young players can do well, even though they are not as matured as other players. They can do well, and we're seeing it now with Lamine Yamal. I know that he's a generational talent, and maybe it's not fair to use him, but young players can do well if you trust in them. And I
we lost King. Oh no, we might have lost connection to King. His data's run out. Oh no, that's. I hope it's not. I hope it's not me. That'd be awful if it was me. But we may have just lost King. I'm just gonna see. I want to give him a couple of seconds to see if we can get him back. But we may have lost him. Kevin says, could we convert Zinchenko into that role? I think there is something to be said about that. Problem is, he's injured, so it's not happening at the moment. I think we may have lost King. He's not yet unfrozen. So, yeah, strange one. But hopefully you got what he was saying. I think he raised some fair points. The issue I've got with the Eze thing is, again, if you sign Eze, you're spending that 60, 70 million pounds or whatever it is. And I think there is something to be said about the striker that everybody wants and the striker that we also need. And I'd agree that we need that number 9 that's going to transform this club. If you spend that money on Eze when you've got Waneri coming through, I'd rather save it. I'd rather save the money, develop Waneri, bring him through, and then put all the money on the centre forward next summer. That's what I'd rather do. But of course, that relies on that actually happening, which is another question entirely. Thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. I really appreciate you. I really hope you've appreciated the phone-in show that we've had. A few calls, a few points of view. I think people need to calm down. I really do. I really don't get it. I was just literally scrolling through Twitter, which is never a good thing. But I saw Rory tweet saying, "Don't get me wrong, last night wasn't a great watch. Sorry." But you think that we were on a 4-game losing streak the way some people are talking about it. So yeah, it's just the way it goes. But thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in and listening. Appreciate your time. King is just back. King, I'm just wrapping up, mate. What happened to your connection? What happened?
Sorry, the phone got overheated. I had it in the charger and on StreamYard. It didn't like that.
I'm just wrapping up the show, mate. So I'll let you close that. It'd be unfair of me if I didn't. So just give me your final kind of assessment and where you're at. Actually, let me ask you a question to finish off, because I'm just kind of closing out on a tweet from Rory Talks Football, who says, "Don't get me wrong, last night wasn't a great watch, but you think that we were on a 4-game losing streak the way some people are talking. Why is the mood so low? And should it be as low as it is?"
It shouldn't be as low as it. 100%, it shouldn't be as low as it. I just think that people, after losing out to Man City for 2 seasons in a row, for some, the transfer window was very underwhelming, and then with the injuries to Odegaard and the lack of kind of open play creativity so far this season is the reason why so many are skeptical. But, it's so funny because if we go to the Etihad and we actually win against City, then you will see a twist. And football fans sometimes are too reactionary in both windows. So it's either, are we the best team in the world, or are we useless and sack the manager? Whereas there should be balance. Like, you can have.
Oh,
we are one of the best teams.
yeah.
We are one of the best teams in the Premier League, and the manager has shown that he's one of the best managers in Europe right now, and we should trust in him. And I'm also looking forward to see what is Mikel gonna do now that Odegaard is gone. What will he
and
come
Moreno
up?
losing both of them?
Yeah, exactly, and Moreno, and who will step up? I think that's even more important. Who will step up? Who will show that they deserve to be here next season? Because I do feel like some of the attacking players right now, they are in that bracket where if you don't have a great season, we may sell you next year. And that's Jesus for me.
Yeah.
That is Martinelli for me.
Yeah.
And even if Zinchenko is another one, Tomiyasu is another one, So we have a few players where they need to have a good season, or we need to move on from them.
Yeah, I think also that you not to go too back into the Eze thing, but as you were disconnected, I was talking about how I think Arsenal are saving themselves more so for next summer, where they think the market will be better. But also there's an important point on Jorginho and Partey's contracts will be up and they'll be gone. So we're going to need to bring in a midfielder or two, and we're going to need to bring in, I think, a centre forwards, especially if Jesus is sold. So that's a lot of money that needs to be invested. So making sure that we were compliant with PSR going into next summer, which we have done by being net zero and still strengthening, I think was also important. So, and Pep Guardiola might be gone, which opens up another opportunity. Next 2025, I think is a big year. It's not to write off this season. That's not what I'm doing. This season is still really important. I think we need to win a trophy this season, and I think we need to compete. But Arsenal are always looking at forwards, well beyond just the season. They're always looking at what's in the long-term view as well.
Yeah, I agree. But also we're gonna need a winger because Sterling is only on loan.
Yeah, of course.
So there's a lot of players that we're gonna need next season, unfortunately. And this is why, again, I felt like this season could have been a good season to take a punt either on an attacking midfielder or, for me, on Victor Gyökeres, because I do feel like he had a lot of the attributes that you would assume he would thrive in the Premier League, in terms of his physicality, his directness, his off the ball movement, and his link up play. I do think people underrate how good link up he has, and I feel like he could have been an option for Havertz, but he could also play with Havertz. As we can see, Havertz can play in midfield. But overall, we have the squad that we have. I still believe that we can go on and win the league, Tom. I don't think that it's over. I think it's far from over. I think even if we lose against City, I don't think it's over. Obviously, it's going to be harder. But this team has shown us that they can go on long runs and they can beat anyone. And, there's this saying that defenses wins you the league. And we do have the best defense in the league. So hopefully, fingers crossed this season, we will do it. And just finally, before I leave, I just want to give a shout out to David Raya. I do feel like a lot of people didn't look into the context that we had a goalkeeper who came to us on a loan, and for a goalkeeper that the majority of the fan base loved passionately, and they showed it also in the media, in podcasts, on the pitch, and to come and have to play against that and not have the fans backing, not have the media, have everybody questioning the manager in press conferences on Sky Sports, and going from Brentford to Arsenal, who is now in a title race and expected to challenge Man City. It's a very hard situation. And I think people didn't look at that enough last season. And because I looked at David Raya's numbers before he joined Arsenal, and he was up there with Alisson as one of the best goalkeepers in the league in preventing goals. And a lot of people overlook the reason why we signed him. People just thought that he was a slight improvement on Ramsdale, but when you looked at his numbers, there was a quality gap between them two. And I think we can see this season now that he is more settled, now that the fans are more behind him, and there's less talk about him in the media, because players are humans, Tom. I do think people forget that sometimes. They are humans. They have feelings. They also have family members and friends who listen to what happens. And this is why I always be like, when the players here, let's get behind them. Let's back them, because they are here to represent our club. Yes, you can be critical, but don't go overboard, because that is not going to benefit the club that you say that you support. I think it's very important.
It is very important, and I'm glad you raised the point before you left as well. Yeah, the human side of the football is never talked about enough ever. I try and do it as much as I can here, but ultimately it never gets talked about. We talked about the other day with the Veltman abuse as well after the whole Declan Rice situation. Like, it's mad what some people will do, but thankfully they are being found out gradually on some platforms, not all of them. That's why I'm not there anymore. But thank you, King. I really appreciate your time as always.
Oh, it's a pleasure, Tom. Take care.
Speak to you soon. Have a good day, my friend. Lovely stuff. Always nice to hear from King. But yes, we're going to wrap up. Thank you so much always for tuning in and listening. I appreciate your time. Do drop a like on the video. Subscribe to the channel if you're new. As always, I'll be back with you tomorrow morning ahead of that game against Manchester City. Potentially with a preview at some point. Need to double check that. Maybe today. I need to work out what I'm doing. I've got a lot of stuff going on. You're going to find out in the next week all the chaos that's going on in my life. But yeah, it's I've got a hectic few days. Thank you as always for tuning in. Do drop a like on the video. Subscribe to the channel if you're new, and stay safe, stay well, stay happy, respectful, and as always, up the Arsenal.